Oh, there's never going to be a revolution in the United States. There's never going to be a civil war. That's a fantasy that a lot of people have. It's never going to happen. How do I know? Just turn on the radio. Just turn on the television. Go watch the movies. Turn on Netflix. See, there's a chemistry to resistance, to revolution, and so on. Because look, what are we actually talking about with resistance? What is resistance? It's a reaction. A revolution is a reaction, and there's a chemistry to that. A chemistry that determines what the reaction will be, whether the reaction will be combustion or reduction. You know, if it's going to be flammable or not, if it's going to be explosive or not, whether the reaction generates heat or cold or what have you. You know, in America, you may have some elements that would normally be explosive when they're mixed, but other elements are in that mixture that cause the opposite reaction. So you have those elements in America for revolution. You have the elements for civil war. But you have too many other elements that are there to ensure that the mixture remains stable. I mean, you have conditions in America that if those same conditions existed elsewhere, that society would erupt. But you're not going to have any eruption in America, except a controlled explosion, you know, like when the police find a bomb, discover a bomb, and detonate it themselves. That's the only kind of explosion that you're ever going to have in the United States at this point. And like I said, all you have to do is turn on the radio to know this. All you have to do is look at their popular media to know this. Because a people capable of revolution has to be a people capable first of imagination. They have to be creative people. In order to have a revolution, you have to have independent thought. You have to have independent thinkers. People who can't think for themselves are never going to revolt. You can't have mental homogeneity across the society where that homogeneity is overseen and imposed by the power structure and ever expect for that society to rise up against the power structure.
Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm hoping that you are doing super great from wherever you're watching me from. I'm your host and presenter, Gendox Stories, and I'm glad that you are doing fine, super great from wherever you're watching me from. Now, there is an important topic that I feel like we need to talk about. America, the United States itself, it's going through a lot of things. And in the midst of these chaos, you need to know that this is a pushed agenda, right? The question is, a lot is happening in the United States today, but why are we not seeing any significant change, especially from its own citizen? Why are people from the United States not having a revolution or some sort of change or a collective idea of trying to change the problems that are happening in the United States? Now, Professor Shahid Bolson explains why this is happening, and he says boldly that America will not receive a revolution. But why? You might ask yourself this question. I'm having a presentation that I'm going to be sharing with you at the end of the video, but just before that, I'm going to be giving you a little more of a context in in a scholarly way. Why am I saying that this is something that is going to be difficult for people from the United States to solve this by having a revolution? This is what Mr. Shahid Bolson explains. Shahid Bolson's assertion that there will never be a revolution in America, this deeply reflects a critical observation of what he perceives to be profound intellectual inertia embedded within the American populace. This is not merely a critique of political apathy, but a broader indictment of societal condition where critical consciousness has been stifled by institutionalized distraction, commodified dissent, and psychological manipulation. Right? Bolson's statement carries with it the implication that America has been conditioned to be passive consumers rather than active citizens. Lack of ideological autonomy, necessity to conceptualize, let alone execute, meaningful revolutionary change. This perspective invites us to interrogate the foundation and mechanisms by which American culture has neutralized political radicalism and converted dissent into marketable, toothless expression. Right? When you talk about intellectual inertia, this is what I mean. Every time people tries to think of something positive in a way that they can make the United States move forward, there is always a way. that the political elites or the government itself will always try to bring them back, and that is called intellectual inertia. The United States culture have always tried to fight education, being intellectual, because you'll start to question all this. And how do? This? They distract you by bombarding you with news, entertainment, sports, information, gossip news, or which celebrity did this to that, and people love this. Consumerism cultures, different brand products will always be coming each and every day. But to do what? To keep on distracting you, right? That's the American culture. So I want to switch this video by Shahid Bolson. He really shares a critical point that I feel like it's important. Buckle up for this video. From there, I'll be back. I'll be sharing my thoughts in regards to this. I don't know where you're watching it from, but I'm hoping you are okay. For those who are watching us for the first time, I'll ask you to subscribe to the channel, join the membership, and really get to see what we can offer you. But until then, let's watch the video. I'll be back.
And nothing illustrates the absence of imagination, the absence of creativity, the absence of independent thought than your popular media. A society without real art is a society incapable of revolution. And your art is vapid, and it enforces vapidness. That's the relationship between art and society. It reflects and it affects. It expresses how you feel, and it tells you how to feel. And you have become, in America, a people with no artistic language, no vocabulary. You're deprived of even what art is supposed to be for you. More and more of your words are being removed from your artistic lexicon with every passing day. Every day, your music gets more formulaic. Your films get more repetitive. Your literature gets more simplistic, to the point that an AI computer program can produce your songs, produce your scripts and your books. Your creative lexicon is shrinking until you're like a toddler who has no words to identify or to articulate or to understand or to express what he's feeling, what he wants, what he's afraid of, what he's happy about, what he's sad about, so on and so on. You're deprived of the language of human complexity. Because look, take music. Now, as Muslims, we have our own views about music. But the fact is, it's a major factor in the culture of the West. Well, 2 or 3 people write the majority of the top 40 songs in America. The same chord progressions, the same auto-tuned vocals, the same repetitive hooks get recycled over and over and over again. Pop music today is not meant to express anything authentic, anything real. It's meant to be an earworm, designed to be addictive, to be used in TikTok videos, to go viral. It's a product, not an art form. It's assembly line manufacturing for maximum profitization, churning out the same formulas musically that sold well in the past, manipulating predictable and shallow emotional responses through a calculated process. That's not art, that's business. And it's draining your society, it's disconnecting your society, it's dehumanizing your society, and it's programming your society. They're emptying the pockets of your imagination, the pockets of your creativity, of your authenticity, and they're leaving you with nothing but a few counterfeit coins, which you can use, to buy slogans out of the company vending machine. And you'll have to suffice with that as your only form of expression, like buying a bag of empty calories, chips or something during your lunch break, and that's supposed to be your nutrition. Listening to this sort of ear candy is just like subsisting on a bag of chips from the snack machine. Your soul is malnourished. Your mind is malnourished. And look at your films. Every film today is a pastiche, a remake, a reboot, a reimagining of something that was made already decades ago in the past. No originality, no ideas, no exploration of the human condition. Movie studios are an assembly line, manufacturing spectacle without substance. And even the elements of the spectacle have been made before. They shouldn't even call them production studios. They should be called reproduction studios. And again, this reflects and it affects the society. Art is being weaponized, is being instrumentalized, utilized to hypnotize, sterilize, and neutralize the population. They're controlling your emotions. They're controlling your thoughts, your understanding, your perception, how you interact with the world. They don't want a single thought to be in your head that they didn't put there. You understand? They want your brain to be numb. They want your brain to be barren, frigid, incapable of producing anything itself. Entertainers in the West aren't providers of moments of happiness and relief for the masses. They are the equivalent of anesthetists for Joseph Mengele. They want to put you in an induced coma. You are just as incapable of revolution in America as a man who's in a coma is incapable of riding a motorcycle. There's never been a totalitarian society in history that had more control over their population than the system of America, the system in America, has over its people. And there's never been a people less capable of resisting or revolting against totalitarian control and oppression than the American people of today. They have disarmed you. I'm not talking about your guns. You've got your guns. But if they were scared of your guns at all, they wouldn't let you have them. So stop talking about your useless guns. Giving you guns is like giving a baby a hammer and nails and expecting him to build a house with it. You won't do anything with those weapons except point them at whoever they program you to point them at. And if they thought for a second that you might actually point those guns in the right direction, well, they'd take them from you so fast it'd make your head spin. No, you've been disarmed mentally. You've been disarmed intellectually. You've been disarmed psychologically, emotionally, and culturally. See, you have a top-down culture in America, you understand? Not an organic from the ground up culture. Your culture is controlled from the top down. Think about that. Stop and reflect on that. Everything that represents cultural expression is a business. It's branded. It's a commodity. It's created, it's crafted, it's molded, it's marketed, and sold by corporations. Your feudal lords, your aristocracy, your oligarchs, the shareholding class dictates to you what your culture is. The rich write your songs. The rich tell you stories in films and television. The rich publish your books. The rich design your fashions. The rich decide what the news will be, what will be reported and what won't be reported. The rich decide what your opinions will be. They even decide what dissent will be. You understand? Yes, even dissent is prepackaged for you. There's an official and accepted pro-position and an official and accepted anti-position. Every aspect of your culture is micromanaged by billionaires. And understand, this top-down cultural dictation is itself a natural development. That is organic in its own way, because Western culture has always been feudalism. But the extent of control is what has evolved. That's what's changed. The fundamental culture was always there. It was always the same. What has grown and developed is the amount of control, the intensity and the comprehensiveness of the domination and of the pacification of the population. One of the greatest tricks of modern power is that it manufactured its own opposition. You're literally told what the dissenting opinion is or is supposed to be. You're given two sides to choose from, but both sides ultimately serve the same system. That's why elections change nothing, why political debates are just theater, why every controversy is just another episode in an endless scripted spectacle. People believe that they're engaging in resistance, when in reality, they're simply playing their assigned roles in a pre-approved narrative. The system does not suppress opposition, it creates opposition and controls opposition and ensures that that opposition will remain harmless. The range of acceptable thought in the society is narrow by design, obviously. You can question war, for example, but only within the given framework that's provided for you. You can critique capitalism, but only in ways that don't actually challenge corporate control, you know, with an anti-capitalist t-shirt or something that you buy on brand. You can be outraged by corruption, but only if you focus on a few bad apples while leaving the structure intact. But if you step outside of the boundaries of this acceptable discourse, this discourse that is mandated by billionaires, you'll be ignored or you'll be maligned or you'll be dismissed or algorithmically exiled. Now, I'm saying all of this because, you know, people constantly ask, what are we supposed to do? What can we do? What do you suggest? What can we do about injustice? What can we do about corruption? What can we do about all the suffering and the violation of our rights and so forth? And every time the expectation is the same. They want some simple, immediate answer because that's their programming. They want some kind of an action that they can take right now. But this approach is fundamentally flawed because it treats only the symptoms rather than addressing the underlying disease. But the truth is, the crisis is not just one of injustice, it's a crisis of culture. The problem isn't simply oppression, it's a deeply entrenched control system that has shaped the entire psyche of society. Injustice, corruption, oppression, and what have you, they don't exist in a vacuum. They're manifestations of a broken cultural foundation. Yet instead of recognizing this, people want quick fixes, temporary relief instead of real solutions. It's like a man who's suffering from chronic pain. You know, his body is breaking down because his own lifestyle is destroying him. But rather than trying to adopt healthier habits, changing his diet and so forth, trying to put some effort into actually healing, he just wants something that will numb the pain. not something that will actually fix the problem, fix his actual health. And after time, he'll just become more and more dependent on stronger and stronger painkillers until he can't even function without them, while the underlying illness continues to just get worse. This is the state of modern society in the West, in America. People don't really want justice. They want relief. They don't seek truth. They seek comfort. They don't desire real change. They want convenience. And as a result, they remain in a cycle. Protests, elections, social media outrage, repeating the same pattern over and over and over, expecting different results, but nothing changes because they're treating the symptoms, not the cause. And like I said, culture creates art and art creates culture. So look at the art that your culture creates and look at the culture that your art is creating. Art has been commercialized. Art is commercialized. Music is sterilized. Culture has been pacified. You know, where are the cultural and artistic voices that shake the system? They don't exist in any meaningful way in America. They've been bought or they've been co-opted. Instead of challenging the status quo, artists are, performing at elite galas. Instead of inspiring some sort of revolutionary movement, they're selling products. They don't question power, they serve power. That's why there'll never be a revolution in America. This is why even the smallest acts of resistance in modern America seem hollow, feel hollow, are hollow. Because they give the illusion of activism without requiring any sacrifice or effort. Opposition is fashion. Activism has been turned into a product. It's a social currency, a momentary trend. And then when it fades, it's replaced by whatever the next cause will be that will capture the public's fleeting attention. The entire society has been engineered for distraction. Entertainment is relentless. Everything is gamified. Everything is turned into a spectacle. Everything is designed to keep people from ever pausing to reflect, pausing to think and to question. And like I said, even if they had a moment to pause, they don't even have the intellectual, psychological, artistic, or cultural language to even articulate their thoughts. You only have the words that the power structure gives you for understanding what they're doing to you. In this environment, how can there ever be a revolution? How's that even possible? If you're a people who are addicted to instant gratification, how can they sustain long-term struggle? A society that's conditioned to seek pleasure above all else, comfort above all else, is never going to choose hardship, even if that hardship is necessary for justice. The population has been trained not to endure, but to escape. I said you've been trained to escape, not to endure. You've been trained, you've been programmed to be serfs. That's what you were and that's what you are, serfs and slaves. Only now escape doesn't actually mean escaping the plantation or the manor or the tenant land. It means just forgetting where you are and what you are. Escape means distraction. It means not even knowing the words to understand that you are a serf or a slave. It means that the songs you sing, the stories you tell, and even the dissent or the opposition that you express are all actually just methods of reinforcing your subject status. And in America, even the dream of liberation isn't really about liberation. The culture and the system created by the culture and the art created by the culture have made the dream not about liberation from oppression, but a dream about becoming the oppressor. That's the American dream. It's a cruel society. It's a cruel system because it's a cruel culture. So like I say, you want short-term symptom treatment, not long-term cure of the disease, because the only kind of revolution that you really need in America is a cultural revolution. America doesn't need cosmetic surgery. It needs brain surgery. It needs heart surgery. You don't need a pacemaker. You need a transplant. And unless and until you actually change your culture, the only way that you'll change your system is by changing it to become worse.
Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm hoping that you are doing super fine, super great from wherever you're watching me from. I'm your host and presenter, Jinduk Stories. Now, what are the mechanisms of distraction that Mr. Shahid Boston talks about? We have a lot of mechanisms of distraction, things that are keeping United States citizens from focusing on the most important thing happening around them. And this is happening deliberately because the elites don't want you to understand all these things that is happening. Even when the United States itself is in the midst of collapsing, but still, there are so many chaotic things going on. People are still not paying attention to all these crazy stuff that are happening. Now, America, Shahid Boston argues implicitly, has perfected the art of distraction using entertainment, consumerism, identity politics, and surveillance capitalism to pacify the population. The endless stream of media spectacles, celebrity controversies, streaming content, and viral social media trends operate not simply as a cultural expression, but as a psychological warfare. Tools designed to preoccupy the masses with trivia while obfuscating structural injustices. In such an environment, the cognitive bandwidth required for revolutionary reflection is continuously depleted. Citizens become participants in virtual cycles, conditioned to scroll, react, and consume rather than question, organize, and act. Distraction, in this sense, is not accidental. It is infrastructural. It is deliberately embedded in the fabric of the American life. That's how they maintain, that's how they get to achieve all these things that you're seeing that is happening today. These are the mechanisms of distraction that are used as political pacifiers, and they are being pushed to the populace. They're being pushed to the masses, and this interferes with your cognitive bandwidth, right? When it interferes with the cognitive bandwidth, because they keep on bombarding you each and every day, and this affects how you perceive or question all these things, but you likely remain to react and to consume on it, do different challenges that is coming in the social media streams and all those stuff. Socialite controversies, celebrity controversies, new songs, all this crazy stuff that are happening that Mr. Shahid Bolson tries to describe. He also talks about manufactured consent and the illusion of democracy. Now listen, Bolson's critique kind of is relation with what Noam Chomsky concept of manufactured consent that he talks about. The idea that public opinion is liberal democracy is shaped not through open discourse, but through managed narratives propagated by corporate-controlled media. In the United States, the illusion of democratic participation is maintained through heavily mediated electoral rituals that offer symbolic rather than substantive choices. The illusion diffuses revolutionary energy by convincing citizens that systemic change is achievable through incremental reforms or party loyalty. As a result, the revolutionary imagination is replaced by a cyclical loyalty to political actors who ultimately preserve the status quo. I'll explain this in a layman's language. This is what is happening. The elites know very well that this is what you need. Both conservative, Republican, doesn't matter. They are all in the same school. They just sit and decide, who are we going to use to represent the massive? They know. We have a lot of Republicans that are always questioning the things that are happening. And so they'll choose a leader from the Republican Party. And then you'll be stopped from thinking the way you're thinking, right? And they offer you what is called the illusion of democracy. What Noam Chomsky described as manufactured consent, still the same thing that Shahid Bolson explains. I'm also going to be talking about psychological colonization and land helplessness. A significant element of Bolson's assertion hinges on the psychological colonization of the American mind. The public is conditioned to believe that resistance is futile and that the system is too powerful to be challenged, and that individual action is inconsequential. This condition is in psychology is termed as land helplessness, right? That ensures that even when injustices are identified, let's talk about police brutality, let's talk about economic inequality, let's talk about mass surveillance, all these do not provoke collective insurgency. Instead, grievances are internalized, rationalized, or redirected to performative outrage that dissipates without systemic impact. The psychological stagnation in anti-ethical to revolution which requires a belief in both the possibility and necessity of profound transformation. That's how it happens. I'm also going to be talking about the commodification of dissent, right? Another critical point that also Professor Shahid Bolson talks about. Now, he gives a critical point in implicit commodification of dissent. In contemporary United States, resistance have been transformed into lifestyle brand. T-shirts, hashtags, TikTok protests become symbol of political awareness without requiring actual risk, sacrifice, or strategic coordination. The state does not need to suppress rebellion when rebellion itself can be packaged and sold. The commodification process ensures that radical ideas are defanged and absorbed into the cultural mainstream, where they lose their oppositional power. Thus, the revolution impulse is neutralized through market mechanisms that reward expression over disruption. Let's talk about identity politics and the fragmentation of solidarity. Bolson's claims also finds resonance in critique of identity politics, which, while valuable in highlighting systemic marginalization, can inadvertently fragment political solidarity, rather than uniting under the class-based analysis that reveals shared economic oppression. American politics has become a theater of competing identities and symbolic representation. This atomization of struggle prevents the formation of unified revolutionary bloc capable of confronting entrenched power structures. Instead of collective emancipation, politics became a zero-sum game of visibility and recognition, orchestrated within parameters acceptable to the elite gatekeepers. I think you need to know that. That's important. Let's talk about surveillance, capitalism, and algorithmic control. Any serious analysis of impossibility of revolution in America must confront the rise of surveillance capitalism. Tech monopolies such as Google, Facebook, and Amazon not only profit from users' data but also engineer behavior nudges through algorithmic manipulation. These digital architectures curate reality in such a way that controversial, submissive, and radical content is deprioritized or obscured altogether. As a result, revolutionary discourse exists in silos, divorced from mass consciousness, right? People are not only distracted, they are digitally confined within echo chambers that reinforce conformity, tribalism, and passivity. Also, I'm going to be addressing the issue of economic precarity as a tool of control. Bolson's assertion, we could also contextualize it within the framework of neoliberal economic management. The rise of gig work, debt servitude, precarious labor conditions leaves most Americans too economically insecure to engage in revolutionary activity. When survival itself becomes a full-time occupation, political imagination contracts, fear of unemployment, homelessness, or medical bankruptcy enforces compliance and discourages risk-taking. And this is true. We can see this happening big time in the United States. The systems, by engineering economic desperation, ensures that even those who are ideologically radicalized are structurally immobilized. Revolution requires not just anger, but time, resources, and coordination, right? This is something that is happening. Entertainment as escapism and political sedative. America's culture saturation within the entertainment function as both escapism and sedative. Film, sports, video games, and endless content streams offer refuge from existential discomfort of political and economic instability. In doing so, they simultaneously antagonize the public, transforming restlessness into distraction. The political becomes another genre of spectacle, consumed like fiction rather than acted upon. As Guy Debroyd noted in The Society of the Spectacle, life becomes a mere representation of itself, and people become spectators rather than historical agents. Bolson's critique highlights that in such a spectacle-driven society, the stage for revolution remains permanently empty. I'm your host and presenter, Jindok Stories. If you find values through my commentary, kindly consider subscribing to the channel. Join our membership. I really get so we can offer you. For those who are supporting us through the Cash App, for those who are sending me super thanks, I'm really, really grateful for the support that you're offering me. But until then, I'm hoping to see you on my next video. Peace, love, and harmony. Salute.